Part B, if time t increases by 1 second, how much does the distance d change? So I included this walking rates table one more time because that should really help us out with this idea. I'm going to do Gilberto's, for example, here. So remember that in 1 second, Gilberto, he's been walking 2 meters. So I'm just going to do 1 times 2. So we should get a change of 2 meters. Think about, what about for 1 second for Alana? What about 1 second for Leanne? What's it getting multiplied by? What do you ultimately get? And then they ask you, how is this change represented in a table? So back when we did the table right here, remember every time you go down a row, that's showing 1 more second. So think about like, okay, what's being added every row? So I see that 1 is being added every row here. What could you see as the pattern in this? Think about what are those patterns? How are you seeing that walking rate show up in a table? Coming back here, they also want you to think about how is it represented in a graph. So instead of going down 1 row, you're moving 1 to the right for the number of seconds. So if you look here on your graph, you'd be looking, okay, if I go 1 to the right, how is that walking rate showing up in my line? How can I see that? And that's going to depend on your graph, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to go too far into that because you might have graphed slightly different than me. And then in number 2, they ask you the same set of questions, but just think about it with 5 seconds. So again, in 5 seconds, Gilberto's still walking 2 meters per second. He should get 10 meters further. And then think again about how is it represented in a table? How is it represented in a graph? How many rows do you jump when you're doing 5 seconds compared to 1 second? How many times do you go to the right on the graph? And then just compare that. Finally, here they're asking what's the walking rate per minute and the walking rate per hour. Let's take a look again at Gilberto. Remember that he's walking 2 meters per second. So we have 2 meters times 60 seconds in a minute, which should get us to 120. So his rate is 120 meters per minute. And then per hour, we have to add 60 more. We have to do that times 60 because we're doing not just 60 seconds, but 60 minutes on top of that because we're doing per hour. So it's really like saying 2 times 60 times 60 to get our answer here. And that will give us how far he's walking per hour. So I'm going to let you calculate that. And then remember, your units are going to be meters per hour. Okay? And then you're going to go, we'll see you in the independent practice.